Hi there. I thought I would do a quick comparison of these two calculators. A lot of people ask which one is better, the 991EX versus the 991CW+. Why is this asked so much? Well, it's a good question. Need a little bit of history for that. Here are a couple of the predecessors. This is the direct predecessor, the 991ES Plus, and this one is 2 generations before the ES Plus. This is the 991MS. These two are actually still in active production as second editions. This 991EX is not. The 991EX is essentially the last of a long line, something like 14 generations of 991s, starting with the fx-991, no suffix, back in 1985. They've basically kept exactly the same, not exactly the same, a very similar layout. Arithmetic keys, operators, trigs, brackets, memory buttons have stayed essentially the same. Other ones have moved about a bit. But this 991EX is the last of it, and some people consider this one to be the best Casio Scientific made, and possibly the best scientific, depending on your preferences. So the 991CW was introduced and replaced the 991EX. And they stopped production of the EX. And we won't talk about the CW, but they managed to fix some of the issues with the CW in the CW Plus. So why? Well, you can see here already that there's been a massive change between these two types of calculators. And as a result, the 991EX has gone a bit funny. In terms of the second-hand market and in terms of what people think of it. It's kind of achieved a sort of legendary status. The second-hand market's absolutely flooded with fakes. It is very hard to tell the difference on a listing if this one is fake or not. I have a fake one. I would put it side by side. I don't think you can tell the difference. Also, people selling authentic or genuine ones are trying to sell them for about 80 quid or so at the moment, which is interesting. So, why not compare these two? Let's do it. If you've seen a recent video of mine, I've gone through this question about a frustum. It's quite a good GCSE question just to show you how basic functionality of a calculator works. And actually, if you're buying any kind of calculator, it needs to be able to do this kind of problem well. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter how good it is at differentiation. If it doesn't do this well, then it's not going to do. It's not going to do you well, basically. So this question is: a frustum is made by removing a small cone from a large cone, as shown in the diagram. Big cone, small cone, gives you the volume here of a cone as a formula. A frustum is made from glass. The glass has a density of 2.5 grams per centimetre cube. Work out the mass of the frustum. Right, let's just do it. Let's just try out the 991EX and see how it's like. Okay, so let's use the formula. So 1/3 times pi. We can just use them as part of a term here. 12 divided by 2 squared, times it by the height, and we have the volume of the big cone. Let's just store that in A because we'll need that. Now we're going to work out how to work out the area of the small cone. So 15 minus 10 is going to give us the height. Divide that by 15, the height of the big cone, so it's 1/3. Essentially, this triangle is 1/3 of this one. So I'm going to times that by 12 to get us our diameter, divide it by 2. Let's do the equation again. So I'm going to square that, times it by 1/3, which I can do 3 to the minus 1. Times it by pi, times it by the height, which is 15 minus 10. And there we go. store that into B. That's the smaller cone. Recall A minus alpha B, and we've got the volume of the frustum. Times it by 2.5, and we have the answer if we round that off a bit. Okay, let's give it a go on the CW plus. Right, so let's do 12 divided by 2, let's times it by 1/3. Actually, first thing we notice there, we don't have x to the minus 1 as a primary key anymore. That was on every other previous 991. Times it by pi. Pi is in a different place. I forgot to square that. Square that there. Square's in a different place. And then times it by the height. And there we are. We've also got format in a different place down here rather than up here. Now then, so I want to store this. This is the first thing to note that is very different. There is no store button. Actually, interesting thing about the 991EX is it does have a primary store button. That is not the case of the predecessors, which have recall and store on a shift, which is kind of silly because you've got alpha and you've got shift. You've got recall there, and you've also got alpha of the memory to recall it. So there's two ways of recalling it. Really, you need store as your primary one. Same with this one here, but that's a hangover from the days before you had alpha, essentially. All right, so let's try and store it. This is how you store it. You press variable. I don't like this. I'm giving you a judgment already, but you have to move around here if you want to store it. So we're going to store it into A. You select it, press OK, press store. There we go. We have stored it. I mean, is that a bit of a pain? You can decide, but imagine, you know, having to go down to Y by having to scroll through it like this. It's so many key presses. Let's just show you how many key presses that is again. So that is 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 for that one, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 if you want to store it into X, for example. Whereas here, store A, 2 key presses, store X, 2 key presses. All right, so let us work out the smaller cone. 15 minus 10 divided by 15, times it by 12, divided by 2. I'm going to square that, times it by 1/3, times it by pi, times it by the height, which is 15 minus 10, and we have our answer. Again, I'm going to store that 1, move over to B, 2, press OK, 3, store. There we are. Shift A minus Shift B gives us our answer, times it by 2.5 to get our mass. There we go. So I think that's quite a useful exercise. Let me just show you one other thing. So on the 991EX, you can put in this formula here. So 1/3 pi, and then let's do A squared and then B. So this is another way of doing this, which I really like. It has been on the 991s since the W series, so something like 6 generations or so. Press calc. So A, diameter 12 divided by 2, height 15. And we have our result there. I can store that into A. Let's go back up again, calculate. So A, I shouldn't have stored it into A. That was a bad move because I was using A. So let's store that into X. Press calc. So let's do, we can do the smaller one. 15 minus 10. 15 minus 10 divided by 15, times it by 12, divided by 2, and then B is 15 minus 10, and we can store that into Y. and then we can do alpha y minus alpha x minus alpha y, get the same answer. That's pretty quick. I'm not sure I would actually do that in real life, but that is, the calc function is pretty neat. There is no calc function on the CW. Instead, next to it, you've got this function button here, but playing around with this, I don't think this would work for it. It only takes one input, which is x. So yes, you can do this, you can do pi, and then you can do x squared, but then you need to have worked out the relationship between the height and the radius. You can't do b, for example, like that for the height. So yeah, basically that is definitely a loss. Okay, so I mean, just that one example gives us you know, quite a, you know, shows us basically quite a lot about what's different between the two of them. Just having a look superficially, like we said, the keyboard layout's completely different, the style is completely different. This one is quite a busy style, it is a bit overloaded, lots of different colors, lots of different buttons, but the upside is that things are available directly to press, or with a shift press or an alpha press. This is a much cleaner style, and you might actually like that. I quite like the style of both of them, to be honest, in some ways. I appreciate the 991EX. Not such a fan of kind of slightly, well, I don't know, it's got a slightly funny pattern here on the background, which looks a bit like fake carbon fiber, but anyway, it's actually quite nice in real life. I quite like the CW design as well. It's quite clean and quite plain. The round circular buttons are, you know, they're okay. But, you know, really it's not about how it looks, it's about how good they are. So yeah, that's the displays are very similar. They are a little bit different. I think this one is a little bit clearer. CW is a little bit clearer. You can see the font is different, so it's you got like a serif font here, whereas you've got sans serif one here. I think it's a little bit clearer to see on the CW. It's also got different tones, so it uses different grayscales as well. Sometimes that's useful, sometimes not. They have a similar menu system with numbers as well. Again, pretty similar there. To be honest, their functionality is pretty similar, to be honest. There is a difference in terms of accuracy, or no, I should say precision. This goes up to about 23 digits, I think, and this one about 16. It's all under the hood. You don't see it in day-to-day calculations. The processor's faster on this as well. I think because of that, there is, so, you know, this is a bit of a classic example of this generation. 11 to the power of 6 divided by 13. It comes up as a fraction of pi. That is now gone on this, and I think that is just because the precision levels are different, so it's not matching to 20 whatever digits of precision on the CW, whereas it does on the EX, which I think is about 16. So yeah, in terms of functionality, they are pretty similar. There are lots of things that are kind of similar about it. I mean, let's do 1 divided by 2E3. This was the problem on the CW. You can see on the CW Plus they put brackets around it by default, and so you get the correct answer. 1 divided by 2E3. It doesn't put the brackets around, which I think is just a bit neater, to be honest. Adding these extra brackets is just adding more sort of clutter, really. 1 divided by 2A. This is a order of operations issue. Both of them will put brackets around it, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think they should just do it like the way they did it on the MS. 1 divided by 2A, it's just that, and it is let's put 10 onto here. Oh no. Oh no. I pressed the wrong button. I meant to edit that, not store it. 10. So annoying this. There we go. This one 10. Yeah. So they all make sense. Even the ES Plus as well doesn't add those extra brackets. Yeah. Okay. But these two are otherwise the same. So what else? Well, missing the count button, that's a big one. Storage, this variable storage, I think is a big downside. So what actually is different in terms of what's on the buttons? I made a list. Here we go. It's quite a long list. These ones are essentially not primary anymore. So we don't have negation, but you've got the minus key, and to be honest, you don't really need negation. You haven't needed negation for a while. Although there is a slight weird side effect of that, which is that you can do 2 plus minus plus 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 minus plus plus 3, and it will still give you an answer, which is a little bit odd. Sexagesimal, maybe not the most useful thing to have a primary button. The natural logarithm, maybe that is. M plus, that one I think is a bit of a loss, but maybe Casio have found that people aren't using that. X to the minus 1, I think that's a real shame to lose that one. It's a really useful function, useful in lots of situations. So yeah, these three I would say I would miss. Engineering button, again, that's a fairly niche use case. Count, that's a big one. Integration, I don't know if you need that as a primary button. And store, that's another big one. So yeah, I would say these ones, natural logarithm, M plus, X minus 1, calc and store are the ones that you're going to feel, to be honest. What is gone from the actual display, from the front, even as a shifter function? Well, it's a long list of them. 10 to the power of X, e to the power of X, factorial, probabilities, integration, differentiation, sums, cube and cube root. Those ones are not, I don't care too much about. Absolute value, again, don't care a huge amount about. Rounding, random, percentages. Percentages are a bit broken on these calculators, to be honest. Constants and conversions, those are in the menu. Where do we find them? Somewhere around here. Oh yeah, there we go. It is in the menu there under catalog. Okay, and the colon operator, that is one, I'm not sure how much people actually use that, but you could do 2 calculations in a row with this. Yeah, it's sort of like a very simplistic programming. Okay, what about some of the advanced functions? So complex functionality is actually pretty similar on both of them. I've tested them. It's fairly limited. It's not anywhere near as good as Casio's graphing calculators. It's nothing to shout home about, but essentially they're the same. Integration, again, very similar, but the extra processor and the extra precision and some tweaking of the algorithms means that it does get this one here right. What is this? X squared minus 3x. Oops, 3x. From minus 15 to 15. 2250. That is incorrect. So let's have a look at it on here. X squared minus 3x. One thing that is good about the CW Plus is, for everything else that is inconvenient, this thing here allows you to go back to the beginning. That is actually quite useful. Minus 15 and 15. I've done that wrong, haven't I? I've done it wrong. Hang on a second. I forgot to put the absolute value in here. Let's try that one again. So that at least on this one, I'm able to find the absolute value quite easily. Oh, this is... Here we go. So where is absolute? Absolute is there. There we go. Right, let's try that one again. X squared minus 3x. Sorry about the singing performance there. Now we have to find absolute on here. Right, where's this going to be? Numeric. Oh, there we go. Did that. That was quicker than it normally takes me to find these. (2259, 2250). This one's wrong. That one is correct. Took a bit longer, this one, but actually that is the correct answer. And for most integrals, this one is faster. The EX gets this one wrong, but they did improve the algorithm in regional specific EX models. Okay. Right. I think that's about it, really. I think those are the main differences. I think the differences you're going to feel are the functions that you find on the keypad that are not here on the CW and are present here on the EX. I think there's some functions that are just missing. There are some slight differences. So for example, there's lowest common multiple and highest common factor are available on this particular model, whereas engineering constants are available on this one. So there are some slight differences in that regard, but I don't think those are the big ones. So what do I think overall? I mean, this isn't, you know, this is made out to be like a perfect calculator. I don't think it is really, but it is a very good one. The 991CW Plus, I can see what they were doing in completely redesigning it. I think that unfortunately it gets a lot of things wrong. I mean, if Casio are listening and they want to improve it, bring back the store button. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. Turn that one there into the store button, and then I could just press store A. That came up with A, but actually it's the 4 that came up there. So for a moment there I thought, oh goodness, they have implemented it. No, they haven't. They've not done that. This one has that display of the variables here. If you press recall, and that's the right way around, that's how it should be done. There isn't any shifted button here. You know, it's just wasted. What else? I mean that is the biggest one. Bring back count. Get rid of this function button and just put count there, and then actually you'd have a pretty good calculator. Yeah. So yeah, overall this is a good calculator. I do get it though when people say that they can't live without this one and they're used to this one. If you're used to this one, what you're going to do, I mean, either if you need a new one, you could go back to this one here. It will feel like going back 10 years because that probably is about the time frame. There are some slight differences that make the EX, I think, a bit better. You could go to Sharp. Have I got Sharp around? Yep, got the Sharp here. I like the Sharp. This one is, you know, you got a nice great big store button there, recall button there. You've got available memory as well. It does feel again a bit older, but it's very direct. Yeah, that's another thing. You can just type in a number and save it. You actually can't do that with this. If you just type in 36, you can't store it. There's no option to store. You have to press equals, and then so it's just an extra key press there. You've got M plus here as well. The Sharp is not quite as good at integration and solving and complex numbers, but for the, you know, for the stuff that you're going to be doing 99% of the time with a calculator, this Sharp I think is really good. You know, very similar to the 991EX, to be honest. Maybe even a little bit better in some ways. Like, I quite like the E here. That's just a preference, because takes up a lot less space, and that can make your formulas a bit more compact. Yeah, but those are my thoughts. I haven't got much more really to say about them. Yeah, this isn't a bad calculator, but you would have to get used to some of this functionality. Yeah, do tell me what you think. Bye.